we are interviewing Barbara Haefman. What year were you born?
I was born on Sunday, December 7th, 1930.
As a young girl, did you have any clue what was happening nationwide regards to World War II?
Yeah, because Pearl Harbor occurred on my 11th birthday, December 7th, 1941. And I was having a celebration for my birthday, eating dinner with my family and some friends that I invited to my party, and we had gone to the movies in the afternoon because we didn't have television or anything in those days. And all of a sudden we heard the newsboy outside yelling, "Extra, extra, read all about it, Japs bomb Pearl Harbor." And so, of course, that's how my first introduction to the war in Japan. I hadn't heard that much about the war in Germany as much, however. The only times that we'd go to the movie theater, which we did all the time, and they'd have news, and that was the only thing that they had, newsreels showing some of the things that were happening in Germany, but it wasn't really that as much of an effect upon me as Pearl Harbor.
What was your family's reaction to the conflict overseas between Germany and Great Britain?
Well, of course, the family, my mother came from Germany, and I looked through her records, and she claimed in some of her legal papers that she was born over in the United States, and I think she did that because there was kind of anti-German feelings at the time of the war over there. Well, they were obviously very much in favor of our side. They were definitely not favoring the Germans or anything of that. They thought it was a very bad thing that they did.
When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, what were you doing when you found out? How did you find out?
Well, I told you that's what happened at the time that I was celebrating my birthday. And of course, the one thing that I remember about it was my brother ran out to get the newspaper, and he's about 17 years older than I was, so they all thought it was going to be over in a couple of weeks. They thought, this is little Japan bombing our big country, and we thought, no problem. And my brother did go into the service, however, after that. And I lost a cousin, a fighter pilot, in fighting the Japanese.
How did you and your family react to the devastating news
of the war? We will obviously, everybody was, like I said, horrified, and we couldn't believe it, number one, and we just thought it was going to be over more rapidly. There was a lot of feeling that I do remember, though, in the beginning with the war over in Germany. A lot of people didn't want to get involved. It was kind of like an isolationistic attitude that we had. Let's not get involved. But once we did, of course, our family was very patriotic in favor of our troops and what we were doing over there.
How did society change after the bombing?
You mean after the Pearl Harbor or after?
Yeah, after Pearl Harbor.
Well, after Pearl Harbor, there was an awful lot of patriotism in the country. People rushed, young men, women didn't do it so much, rushed in to enlist, and everybody was anxious to do whatever they could do. I can remember this one thing that really differs from today. The movie stars would come over and put on free shows, like in Milwaukee. I lived in Milwaukee. And we'd go watch these movie stars on the street corners, and they would sing songs or give some entertainment in order to sell war bonds, because that's how we were paying for the war. And that part I really remember as a major change. And there was things like rationing, gasoline. We couldn't get gasoline. They had food stamps. If my mother wanted to get a beef roast on a Sunday, she had to save enough stamps so she could buy the meat. So we had certainly some restrictions. It wasn't anything like they had to go through over in Europe or where their places were bombed, etc. But there was a difference. And patriotism was very, 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 very strong. I mean, we used to sing those songs, patriotic songs, and make fun of Tojo, who is the Prime Minister of Japan. And we did not like the Japanese particularly. Very definitely.
Were your parents and family all about getting into the war?
Were they what? I'm sorry?
Were they all for the war?
Well, yes, especially when we were attacked. I think prior to that time, I was only about 10, 11 at that time, so I don't really remember whether they were so anxious about the war in Germany, but they certainly were with the Japanese after we were attacked, yes.
Was society more considerate on saving supplies for our troops, or did it not affect your neighborhood?
Well, yes, it did. It, as I mentioned, just with the people were, we did have rationing. We couldn't get all the meat we wanted, that, and all the good metal and things like that was going to the troops. I remember saving tin cans. Everything came. We didn't have throwaway stuff like they do now, but they kept the tin cans and things like that. We all contributed to the war effort. Places like the West Bend Company, they changed their whole manufacturing over and no longer made pots and pans, but they made shell cases for bombs and things of that sort. And yeah, but in my recollection, I didn't suffer overly. I didn't have to really, other than knowing that I had not only one cousin die over in Japan, but another one in Germany. But we didn't really experience a lot of terrible shortages that I recall at that age, anyhow.
Yeah.
Maybe my parents did, but I didn't.
Being so young, what were your thoughts on the war?
No, you got really into it. Of course, having it happen on my birthday made it even a little bit more intense. And then, of course, having those two cousins, they used to have a star, a flag. If you had somebody in the service, you'd have a flag in your window, and it had one color star if the person was just in the service. Like my mother would have a star out for my brother. But if you had somebody injured, there would be a silver star, and if you had somebody killed, it would be a gold star. And I remember my aunt having two gold stars in her window with her sons killed within 1 month of each other on both fronts. And so that I felt the sorrow and the sadness that my family experienced at that time.
Mm-hmm.